So understanding the Drupal way, there are no ordinary modules. And that's Dries Buytaert telling you about the way of Drupal. And for those of you who don't know, Dries is the one who created Drupal. He runs Acquia now, he does Malum, but he's the first person who came up with this idea. Oh wait, just kidding. Dries didn't actually say that. I made that up myself. He's never said, you know, there are no ordinary modules. So who am I? I'm Mark Isaacson on Drupal.org. I'm vegan triathlete. I am putting together a curriculum on Udemy. So you can actually find me on Udemy at that link there, Mark Isaacson. And I will actually be turning this presentation into a Udemy class. I don't have it on there yet, but if you guys, I'll give you my contact information at the end again. If you guys want to ping me, I will give you access to that class for free once it's actually up and available on Udemy. And I will make sure that I actually fill in some more things, and it'll give you an opportunity to spend some more time going over things on your own. Because one of the things that I need to confess up front here is one of the points that I'm going to cover, one of the concepts of Drupal is the idea of altar, like the Drupal Altar functions, and I didn't come up with a good one. The Drupal Altar example that I have is like super incredibly lame. So that's one of the things that I'll try to address when I turn this into a course, is give you a better example of like what you do with the Drupal Altar function. And so that is actually part of the Drupal way as well, because this is kind of what happens sometimes when you're doing Drupal, is you're like, well, I know there's this function that's supposed to do this thing, and I'm using the function, and it doesn't seem to be doing that thing, and I'm going to have to bang around and spend a little more time to figure it out here. So that is part of the Drupal way. And the other confession that I will make up front here is that I had intended to do this presentation in Drupal 8. Because we do have the release candidates for Drupal 8, and I actually have Drupal 8 loaded on my machine. It wasn't a technical difficulty on my part of doing Drupal 8. It's just that when I looked in Drupal 8, as lame as I'm saying my example is with the Drupal Altar, I really couldn't come up with any good examples for the other things that I'm going to show you, because either the contributed modules that I wanted to use to demonstrate this stuff to you have already been rolled into core, and so like that didn't give me a good example, or the contributed modules haven't been ported to Drupal 8 yet. So this is also kind of part of the Drupal way, is that it takes a long time. This is supposed to be changing, but it takes a long time for the next version of Drupal to come out, and then once it comes out, it takes quite a while for the contributed module maintainers to get their modules ported to it. Even with Drupal 7, where they had this push, this pound, there was some pledge that they had for Drupal 7, so it was like pound D7 something or another, to try and make sure that all the Contrib modules were ready to go when D7 finally hit. And still, that didn't really happen. It took a long time for the Contrib base to catch up with Drupal 7 core. And it's going to take a while for Drupal 8 as well. So I had to do the presentation in Drupal 7 here so that I could actually have some good examples to show you. All right, so what really is the Drupal way? The true statement would be not that there are no ordinary modules. The true statement would be there are only ordinary modules. Because the way things work in Drupal, it doesn't matter whether it's Drupal core, it doesn't matter whether it's a contributed module, or if it's one of your custom modules, they're all first-class citizens. And whatever can be done in one module can also be done in another module. And that's an important point for you to understand about Drupal, is that it's this modular system, and all the modules, no matter where they came from, are first-class citizens, and they all can do this very same types of things. So now that I've given you a bit of these confessions about my presentation and some of the kind of like dirty insider stuff about the Drupal way, it's time to hear the rest of the story. So let's see what you guys actually came here for with this Drupal way. Bless you. So the first rule of Drupal is don't hack core or contrib. And this is something that you will hear over and over again. And I want to give you an example of why you don't hack core or contrib. Some people, when they first hear this, I think they have this sense like, oh, we're mean and we're telling you you aren't allowed to touch our code. It really isn't about being mean, it's about your benefit for not hacking. So let me give you an example here. So I'm going to go into themes, Bartik, templates. And I'm going to come into the page template. Oh, so sorry. So the theme that you're looking at right now is the core theme that comes with Drupal. It's called the Bartik theme. And so I'm going into Drupal's themes directory right now. This is the core stuff. In a subsequent slide, I'll tell you about a little bit of the directory structure and how that works. But what I'm about to do is go into the Bartik core theme, and I'm going to hack the theme. I'm going to change something in this page layout. So let me get down to it here. And I've already conveniently changed this so that I can have it ready to go quickly here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take part of the page layout and I'm going to change that template. So I have just hacked core. And you can see, oh, there's my theme right now. I'm playing with this Bartik theme like, whoops, I hacked core. So what? Big deal. What difference does it make? It still runs. Nothing's breaking. Why shouldn't I hack core? Well, let's take a look at my site. So I was in incognito. Now I'm actually signed in as an administrator. And let me go to the reports. And let me look at my status report. And let's see here. Actually, I got to run cron so you can see this horrible, scary message about not secure. Run. Okay. Drupal core update status not secure. Version 7.41 is available. And right now, I am running 7.36. Oh, noes! I've got to update Drupal. So let me do that. So I'm in my Drupal root here, and I use drush, so I can do drush up. And it says, okay, I noticed that you've got these things that need to be updated. The flag module needs to be updated, and OG form, I don't think it's going to do anything with that. And then there's also, you see the Drupal core is going to be updated. So I'm going to say, yes, go ahead and update. Do these updates. So it's doing its update. Hooray! We've just successfully updated Drupal. Fabulous. Let me go back to my, let me go back to my reports now, and let me refresh this page. And it's probably going to want me to run cron again. You can see I'm on 7.41. Let me run cron. And I'm at 7.41. And we're all happy right now. There are no nasty red X's on my status page. So, awesomeness. I'm up to date. I'm secure. Let me go back to my incognito window here and refresh my page. Oh, bummer. That modification that I made to the theme is now lost. And it's lost because I hacked core. And when I update core, all of those things that I hacked into it are gone. And the same thing happens if you do it in a Contrib module. You update the modules, and all of your changes are gone. And now your site doesn't function the way that it was functioning before. So this is for your own benefit that you do not hack core or Contrib. So let's move on to one of our next rules here. The second rule of Drupal is, where do you place things so that when you are doing your updates, like you saw me use drush right now, and if you don't know what drush is, that's fine, don't worry about it. It's a command line tool. It'll help you do stuff really easily in Drupal. But you saw, oh, super easy. I just do a drush up and everything was updated. But if I don't place my things in the right place in the directory structure, I do my drush up and then pow! Once again, all this stuff that I had done is gone. And I say, oh, bummer. I hope I had a backup of that thing there, because now I'm kind of a little worried. So, the way that things are set up in Drupal 7 and below is that you can see that, let me bring this a little larger for you so it's a little easier for you to read. And let me clear that out. So, I am right now in my Drupal root here. If I list the directories, you will see that we've got this modules directory and this themes directory. And what people will usually do when they first start using Drupal is they say, oh, I want to write a module, or I want to use this contributed module, and so I'm going to put it into the modules directory. Or they say, oh, I want to do my own custom theme, and so I'm going to put it in the themes directory. Wah, wah, wah. Wrong answer. That's not where you place things in Drupal 7 and below. Where you place things, you will also notice there is this sites directory. Okay? So where you want to place things in Drupal 7 and below is somewhere under the sites directory. And I don't want to get too into detail about multi-site versus whether a single site, but you want to put it, for right now we're going to say you're going to put it under sites all modules or sites all themes. So if I list the sites directory, you'll see I've got the sites all. If I list sites all, you'll see I've got sites all modules and I've got sites all themes. And that's where you put your custom code or your contributed code, and everything will be lovely then when you want to update your site, because Drush knows not to mess with the sites directory. So that's how you would preserve all those things. Now, the other point that I mentioned, I'll just jump back there so you can see it. In Drupal 8, they have now changed things because so many people made the mistake when they come into the Drupal root and they see the modules directory and they see the themes directory, which seems like such a logical place to put your modules and themes. In fact, that's exactly what they've done in Drupal 8. And so I do want to show you my Drupal 8 instance so you see how that structure lines up. So if I go into, and so this is actually my Drupal 8 instance that I was mentioning to you that I was going to be using to do this Badcamp presentation until I realized that this was totally not going to work doing it Drupal 8. But you will notice this directory structure here is that we now have this new directory called core. And that's where all of the core stuff goes. And now it's totally okay if you put stuff under modules or themes when you're using Contrib or custom for that stuff. It's totally okay to put it there. And by the way, if you still like the sites way of doing things, you could put it under sites. So that gets you the question.
Yeah, if you're doing a multi-site, it seems like the sites where you end up putting modules. Well,
they introduced this concept, they introduced this concept in Drupal 7 of, there's a folder that's called sites.php, and that's where you can tell, oh, when I see this domain name being accessed, I know I'm going to go into this subdirectory. Okay. So you still have that same ability that, and you're kind of answering your question, that it depends on if you want to be able to share that across sites, or you don't want to be, or you don't care about sharing it across sites. So so you still have the same option here that you could do your sites all, or you could do your site specific. And now with the way that things are in Drupal 8, you also have the ability that you could put the things in modules or themes that you want to be available to all of the sites. So if that doesn't make totally clear sense to all of you right now, don't sweat it. Just put what you're putting in the back of your mind is that there's a place that you're supposed to put your things in the directory structure when you're using Drupal so that your changes don't get blown away. And it's changed in Drupal 8 from how it was in Drupal 7. But there's actually still the ability to kind of do it like it was done in Drupal 7. Question?
So if you have multiple sites and you have some modules that you do not want on some
Right.
sites, you'd still use the same way that we do in 7. You put it in sites.
Well, right, exactly, yeah. So if you put stuff under modules or themes in Drupal 8, that's
That
the
goes
same
to
thing.
everybody.
Yeah, that's the same thing as like putting it under sites all, and so it's available everywhere. So true. If you're doing a multi-site setup in Drupal 8, you're going to want to follow that same convention as you've done in Drupal 7, is that you've got your sites, bless you, and then you've got your site name, and then your modules, site name theme. So bless you, it's the same type of thing as you would do in Drupal 7 when you do a multi-site setup.
Thank you.
Good? All right, yes, questions?
So are the themes and the module folders, are they empty when you do it from the install? Because what about your core modules and your core themes?
That's under
Are they
core.
all in core now?
Yeah, everything is under core. So I'll list this so that you can see what's in those, because this is a total clean install. I haven't played around with it. I did try to, I was hunting around to see if there were some contributed modules that I can use for the demo. So if I just list what's in core, you can see that there's modules and there's themes. And so if I do ls core modules, you can see all the core modules. If I do ls core themes, you can see that here's the themes that come with it. If I do ls of sites, you can see that all I've got right now is sites default. It hasn't done the sites all. So there's nothing in there. And this is what I'm saying. There's like this sites.php file that you can use, which is kind of cool. It's nice doing it this way. This is a nice change they made in Drupal 7. I don't want to get too sidetracked on all my sites. Anyway, it's just nice being able to use this sites.php, because the way things happen in Drupal 6, what happened in the database for some of the stuff, we got stuff where I was doing the directory structure, and then when you went to change things, like, it just became a huge headache when you wanted to move multi-sites around. And that was kind of addressed very well in Drupal 7. So it's pretty nice being able to do this sites.php.
That's where your custom code is going. Site.php.
No. Let me show you an example of what the sites.php file looks like. There's not custom code that goes in there. What you put in there is like the mapping. Let me see if I can, I don't know if I've got a good example of something where I've used the sites.php. Let me just go into this one that's here. So vi sites, the example sites.php. So what you end up doing with this is that, so like what they're showing here is that they're showing you examples of, let's just do this. So if somebody went to dev.drupal.org, you say, when they go to dev.drupal.org, I want you to look in my folder. And it doesn't even have to be called example.com. The folder name could be just like example or whatever. That's the type of stuff that goes in sites.php, is this mapping of when somebody goes to this URL, I want you to use this subdirectory to get at this stuff. So that's what's in there. Okay. All right. Let me hop back over now. So just put your stuff in the right place in the directory structure, and you'll be safe. That's sort of like the corollary to the first rule. It's like you don't hack core or contrib, and you also want to make sure that you put your stuff in the proper place. So, okay, what was I supposed to do with this Bartik theme so that I can get my changes to happen? Because I really like the Bartik theme. It's this beautiful blue theme. It does all the stuff that I want to do. I don't really want to have to create my own theme. I just want to tweak the Bartik theme a little bit. How am I supposed to do that? All right. Well, let's take a look. So I will show you. Let me get back to and I'm going to go into sites here. And actually, I can go into sites all. So you can see I got my sites all modules. I got my sites all themes. If I do a list on my themes, you can see I've got this theme that I called Bartik sub. And I'll just touch on this briefly because I don't want to overwhelm you with the whole idea of how you do the theming and the sub-theming. But if I go into here, you will see that what I've said is, here's the key part of it here. There's this base theme. So I've got my sub-theme. The base theme that I'm using is the Bartik theme. And now that I've got this sub-theme, I can do anything that I want to tweak how the theme works. And so one of the things that I've done is I've got my CSS so that I can change the way that my sub-theme works. And then what I've also done, I've got this page tpl.php. And if you paid attention, what I did before when I was hacking the theme is I went into page tpl.php and I put my thing in there to say, oops, I hacked core. So what I can do here, if one of the things I needed to change, for instance, was on the page layout, I create my subtheme, I put this page.tpl.php in there, it's going to override the page tpl.php that's in the base theme, but it's going to inherit everything else from the base theme. I don't have to put all this stuff in there. So I've gone into my page tpl.php, I've made my change, and so let me show you the way that we would do this properly, is I would come into here and I would say, set my base theme as the default theme. And now when I come in here, and I refresh this, ta-da! This is how you properly change things here. That now I've changed the page layout so you can see at the top, just so it's clear to you that I'm using the Bartik subtheme. And then you'll also notice what's changed is that I've got some CSS applied so that my previous and my next are positioned differently. You can see that the font is larger than it was before. So this is running off my subtheme right now, and now we're all good to go. It doesn't matter when I update Drupal, when I update any Contrib modules, all of the stuff is going to fit together nicely, and I don't have stuff that just suddenly starts behaving differently on my site as I go through updating things. Next. So I've mentioned core, Contrib, custom modules. I said they're all first-class citizens. You know, that's where I came back. I said, actually, Dries never said there are no ordinary modules. I said the truth is there are only ordinary modules. So what the situation with core, Contrib, and custom is pretty much just ties into what I was telling you about the directory structure. The only difference between these three types of modules is where they live in the directory structure. Other than that, they're all first-class citizens. They're all equal. They all can do the same things. Anything that one can do, the other one can do. And so the only distinction is where they live and who wrote it. So Drupal has to ship with something to give you this framework to use, and that's what we call core. Okay? That's Drupal core. This concept of Contrib, that when you go to Drupal.org, and you can go to, you can download themes, you can download contributed modules to extend the functionality of your site, and I'm going to actually show you that in just a moment here. So that's Contrib. That's when you go to Drupal.org, you can find these other themes and modules that you can use. Custom is anything that you have written. And ways that people will organize their directory structure at times, and let's see if I have done that here. Let me see if I did my modules. So, so actually I haven't done it in this one. I've just put it under modules. This was an older Drupal 7 install that I had before. What people will do at times is, let me see if I've done it with public HTML, bad camp, sites, oh, I didn't even put it in there. Okay, what people will do oftentimes, Drupal's pretty flexible in how it can find things, so what people will do a lot of times is under their modules directory, they'll further break that apart into other subdirectories, and they'll have a subdirectory that's called Contrib, they'll have a subdirectory that's called custom. And then, and so instead of just dumping everything under sites all modules, they'll dump the Contrib under sites all modules Contrib, and you'll put your custom stuff under, well, you probably wouldn't likely put it under sites all modules custom, because the custom stuff that you're doing might be to a particular site. But you might write a utility that you like to use on all of your sites, like I've done with my sites. I've got a lot of sites that I built, and I get a lot of spam registrations, and I don't want to have to keep going in deleting those accounts. So I've actually got a cron job that runs, and it checks for any blocked account that hasn't been, it's been blocked for over a week, and then when the cron job runs, it just deletes those accounts, so that all these spam registrations that I get are just cleaned out. It runs every day, and it'll just keep clean those. So that's an example of a custom module that I've written that I do put under the site's all modules.
Now, in terms of you writing it, I'm sure there's other contributors that have modules that you can just download instead of you having to write it and just use that, or did you wind up doing it because you couldn't find it?
So,
Because what you're doing is pretty slick. I like that idea.
thanks. Oh, well, you know what? You guys, you can just paint, I haven't, built it out so that, it would be really suitable for me to put in the Contrib base. I had thought about it, because like you say, there are other types of modules that you can use, but, I just needed a simple thing, and I don't need, this whole big developed Contrib module. All I wanted to do is a simple cron job. It just checks for the things that are a week old and deletes them. But if you guys pay me, I'd be happy to share that. I'd be happy to put it in even as a gist in GitHub that you guys can grab. It's I just wrote it for my own little utility. So as far as answering your question, is there anything that does that? This is a number of years ago that I actually wrote this module because I just got tired of having to clean up all this spam users on the site. And I can't remember. I think I looked for something and I didn't find anything that was exactly that, or the things that I found were just way more than I needed, and I didn't want to load down my code base with a module that had all this other stuff that I didn't. So I just said, you know what, I don't even remember how many lines of code it is. I mean,
But it's not 600.
It's probably 7 to 10 lines of code that I wrote at most. And some of those are comments and if I put a proper dot block on it or something like that. So it was just easier for me to do it on my own. But like I said, go ahead and ping me if you want. I'm happy to share that with you. It's pretty simple, and it gives you an idea of a custom module on top of it. It can get you started with that. So that's all there is to core, contrib, and custom. There's really nothing more to it than that. So let's move on. Now I'm going to start covering. So I gave you a couple of rules. A couple of Drupal rules. Now I'm going to give you some principles that you want to keep in mind of how Drupal works. And so the idea of Drupal is that it's a modular type of a system, and the modules should really be focused on doing one small thing really well. And so an example that helps people understand this is if you're using something like Joomla or something like WordPress and you want a slideshow, there's this monolithic plugin that many times you actually have to purchase, but you acquire some way or another this monolithic plugin, and it seems really awesome because you put it on your site, you enable it, and it's pow, I've got a slideshow just like that. Whereas when people come to Drupal, they say, where's the slideshow module? And they're oh, well, first you install views, and then you want to get views slideshow and create a content type, and you're going to attach these fields to the content. And the person's seriously? All I asked for was a slideshow. What's the deal that you're saying, oh yeah, it's really easy to do. All you do is, and then we list all these steps, and people say you people are crazy. If I wanted this in WordPress, I'd just get the slideshow. Well, the thing that seems so wonderful about that's not so wonderful is well, what's one of the things that you typically use in a slideshow? There's a jQuery plugin that you're going to use. That's the jQuery cycle. And the jQuery cycle might be used in something else. But when you get this monolithic plugin that does all of this wonderful stuff, so you just click a button and you've got a slideshow, it's got to deal with it's forcing you to put your images in a certain place. It's assuming a directory structure. And it's got the jQuery cycle. It's got all of this stuff that's bundled up. But now when you want to do something else that's similar to that, but not exactly the same thing, well, what do you do in WordPress or Joomla? No problem. I'll go get another monolithic plugin that probably has a lot of overlap with something I already have. Whereas with Drupal, sure, the first time you go to build your slideshow, you may be overwhelmed. What is this views thing? What's a content type? Why do I want to put fields on it? Why do I want to blah, blah, blah? But when you've gone through that the first time, you've learned a lot of tools that you can then leverage to do other things on the site. You've learned something about views, you've learned something about content types, you've learned something about fieldable entities, and now when you have this next thing that you do on your site, you say, whoa, wait, that's like really similar to what I had to do for my slideshow. I bet I could just make another content type, and I can put these fields on it. And I bet I can build a view that does stuff with this content type, and wow, now I got this next thing that I want to do. And you don't have to keep acquiring one after the other monolithic plugin that does all this stuff for you. And so this is the way that Drupal does things, is that like you have your little tools that can be mixed and matched in different ways. And when you learn how to use one of those tools, you're learning it not just for that situation, but then you get to leverage it to do other things as well. So this is one of the big things about the Drupal way, is this idea of this modularity and being able to combine your tools in different ways.
So I got a quick question.
Oh, sure.
Drupal 8, did they include some of this that you're talking about in Drupal 8 versus Drupal 7?
Views is in Drupal core. Yes, there's a lot of things that have been included in Drupal 8, and that's part of the problem that I ran into when I was going to do this presentation in Drupal 8, is that some of the contributed modules that I wanted to demonstrate for this idea of extensibility and using hooks and stuff like that were already in core, and so like it didn't become a very good example. There is this like an ongoing type of debate and give and take in Drupal, the idea of small core. Like, we don't want to weigh core down, let's not put so much into core, but then the opposing thing is like, but we want this to be more useful out of the box. Because there's, you know, kind of like the competition with WordPress and like trying to win over some of the WordPress users. So yes, there's stuff that's been moved into core now, but it is still a module. Oh, and so another point that's important to keep in mind about modules and this modularity is that another reason that you don't want this one huge module is that when you have a module, it's either enabled or it is not enabled. You don't get to partially enable a module, right? And if you're having a problem on your site and you want to test some things out and you're not sure if one of these modules is causing the problem, but you have this one module that has tons of stuff in it, and now when you disable that module, now your site can't do any of the stuff it was doing before. It doesn't really give you a good test. So when you keep your module small, it's much easier to enable and disable modules to figure out what's going on the site. And so even with Drupal core, with stuff that's been put into core, they've been put in these small modules that could be enabled or disabled. Did that answer that?
Yes.
Okay, great. So moving on to the next point is, so with this idea of things being modular, you need to have, there's this key principle of extensibility, and we're going to get into details very soon here of how do you make things extensible. So even though you've got your module that does this one small thing very well, your module needs to give a way that other modules could then plug into that module and do things. So for example, when I talk about the slideshow, views isn't just one module. Views is like this huge thing that's made of lots of modules and submodules, but views provides ways that it's highly extensible. And one of the ways that views is extensible, this concept of this other contributed module that I mentioned, this views slideshow module, is just like a views, it's a plugin to views that it's honestly, I think it's like a formatter plugin or something like that. I don't think I'm using the right term. So Views gives a way that you can define these plugins that Views can use. And so what this Views slideshow gives you is a way that Views can now display these things as a slideshow, as opposed to displaying them in some other format, like in an ordered list or whatever, for example. So extensibility is a big part of Drupal, that you want to write your things in a way that other modules are able to leverage the power of what your module is doing. Oh, so another example of extensibility is the concept of fieldable entities. And so Drupal provides this core functionality of entities and the concept of being fieldable but you're able to then extend your content types by adding fields to them, right? And so that's another example of the extensibility, that Drupal, the content type out of the box, and we'll look at this in just a minute, so if this isn't making total sense, don't panic. A content type out of the box just has a very limited number of fields, but you can add new fields to that content type to make the content type more suitable to what you need to do. So for instance, I've created a content type for my presentation that I've called presentation, and I have added fields to it. In fact, let me just show you that. So if I go into the configuration and the content types, structure and the content types, and I've got my content type that I called presentation, and I've put some fields on it. That one of the fields is my previous field, one of my fields is this next field, and what you'll also notice is that it says the field type is an entity reference. This entity reference field type is a field type that was defined by a contributed module. That field type doesn't exist until I've installed this entity reference contributed module, and that entity reference module then gives me a way that I can display my previous and next information on the screen. So if I look at my slide 17, for instance, since there is a previous and a next, what I can do in here is, here's the node, that's what we call it in Drupal, we call them nodes. Here's the previous node, and here's the next node that is related to this node that I'm creating here. And then what I have done is, if I go into Manage Display for the presentation, I've said, oh, I want this previous and the next to appear as labels, and by the way, I want them to be linked to the node that they're referencing. So this is an example of how extensibility becomes so powerful in Drupal, that you've got these generic content types, but you add fields to them, and there's different types of fields that you can add, which can give you certain functionality, and just all these pieces just kind of fit together and give you the ability to produce this stuff without having to write any code on your own. Okay.
So would the purpose of that, besides the fact that you're wanting to chronologically keep track of this stuff, also extend for somebody that's visiting your website, for example, they want to see a before and after picture of a particular job maybe or something? I guess you could filter it that way?
Yeah, I mean, it could. Like, there's so many different things that you can do. Drupal is highly abstracted, so the things that the specifics, the devil's in the details, right? So you've got this abstracted concept, this functionality that you're able to implement on the site, but then what you actually do with that functionality can be tweaked in so many different ways. So, yes, you could do that. You could do something entirely different from that as well.
We use the same thing to access different chemicals. We use the entity reference.
Yeah, entity reference is pretty cool. Entity reference is even more abstracted. This concept of an entity in, like I promised you guys I wasn't going to get too technical with this stuff here, so I won't go too deep into it, but when you deal with the entity reference field type, it even has built into it the way that you can specify, like, oh, the types of things that I want to appear in this autocomplete field that I have here should be limited to these other types of things on the site. So I don't want to be able to reference just any old thing on the site. So for instance, what I did with mine, the only thing that I want to appear in the autocomplete is other of those presentation nodes. Not any of the basic pages, not any of this or that or the other thing. So it's just, Drupal's really powerful and extensible that way. It's like, it's an amazing tool. And that's part of the place where people will get hung up a lot of times, though, is on account of the fact that, like, there is so much power and you have to learn to use that power. Okay. So this idea of collaboration, these examples that I've given here, so I've mentioned the entity API, which allows you to handle entities, and the entity reference module, it does depend on entity API to be able to do its things. And then similarly, there's this library API. And why I mentioned the library API comes back to when I was talking about the views slideshow and the concept of having that plugin, which uses a jQuery cycle plugin. Instead of each of the modules like having to include the jQuery cycle plugin in their module, the library API gives you a way that you can share some of these third-party libraries. And so once it's available through the library API functionality, then other contributed modules that want to take advantage of that same plugin can do it. And so that's an example of collaboration. Okay, that instead of having to have all these monolithic things that do the stuff on their own, we can have them stored in a shared space that we can use. All right, now, how we implement some of these things with extensibility and collaboration, et cetera, et cetera. So a common methodology that we will use in Drupal is a hook, that we can hook into things. So if I can just very quickly get to this for you. So vi modules link. And if I come into the link module, I'm going to show you, oops. So the link module uses hook field info so that it can tell stuff about a new type of a field, which is this link field, for instance. So let me show you this in action here. When I want to say that I want to manage my fields here, and let's say that I wanted to add a new field, when I look at the field types that I have available to me, and they're alphabetical, so you'll notice there's nothing that says link in here, okay? That field's not available. If I come into modules, and let me get down to where is this one? Under the link field. So I'm going to enable the link module now. So it wasn't enabled previously. It was just in my code base. I'm going to enable the link module. I'm going to save this. And just to be sure, I don't think I really need to clear cache, but I'm going to clear cache anyway, just so I don't get there and say, oh, we're still not seeing it. And when in doubt, clear cache. So, in fact, I should have just gone into Drush to do it, but okay, I'm here. All right, so I've enabled the link module. Now, when I come back into my content type, and I go to manage fields again here, just go to the same place that I was before, and I say to add a new field, you'll see, ta-da! Now I've got this new field that's available that's called the link field. The link field used one of Drupal's hooks to define that field's information, so now it's accessible there. So there's an example of a hook for you and how the interface changes when a hook is implemented. Okay, another common bit of functionality is this idea of themeable functions. So if I go into my content right now, and I go to this, actually first let me go back to the Bartik base theme so you can see how this changes. So I go into the content and I go to my welcome page. Look, I'm using the flag module, okay? It doesn't matter whether you understand what the flag module is or not. Just pay attention to the fact that these three items, there's these three flags that you can put there, and they're like all in line right now. And they say flag this item. If I go back in and I enable my theme as the default theme, and I go back into that same welcome page, you can see that they are now, oh, you can't really see how they're highlighted in the background, but you can see that they are stacked on top of each other. And what I've done is, the flag module has made this output themeable. It's provided a template file that I'm able to use, and I go into that template file and I change the markup. So if we look here, sites all themes, and we go into my Bartik subtheme and we look at the templates, you can see that I've got this flag TPL PHP. So in my theme, I've overridden that function so that it is formatted differently, and so now they stack on top of each other, and you couldn't really see that there was a background there, but I applied a background to it as well. So that is using themeable functions. That's what that example is showing for you. The next mechanism that we can use is this idea, is altars. And this is where I had to do this lame example of an altar. You'll just have to forgive me, like it totally sucks. But I couldn't come up with a better example of an altar. So I'm going to come into my custom module, and I did this altar here. I'm going to enable this. And now you can see there's this thing that displays here. It's showing like these 3 elements that we have here. And the same thing is going to happen. I don't know if I've made this accessible. Oh, I didn't make it accessible to anonymous users. So you can see it through here. But what I've done to accomplish that is I've gone into the modules. Oh, here's my custom module. I just didn't create a folder that I call Contrib, but I created one that I call custom. And so here's my altar function. And in my module, I've just used this Drupal altar on the block list altar. And what I'm telling it to do is this DPN is what's displaying that info there. So that's what my altar is doing right now. It's just displaying that information about the blocks, and what would have been in the block list. So don't worry about the details of like exactly what that's supposed to be doing. Just pay attention to the fact like, oh, that's tapping into this Drupal altar functionality, and so I put this DPN, and that's what makes the blocks appear on the page. So so that gets you into the altar. All right, next. The idea of specificity and suggestions. So I showed you the example of overriding the template file for the flags that I had done in my theme layer. And so you notice there was this flag TPL. Well, I've got one that's even more specific than that that's called flag themeless flag, because I created a different, a different content type that I've created that gives it more specificity. So if I come back in here and I look at my content and I go to the demonstrate, this is the flag themeable function. And if I come to this one and I show this page, you'll see that I've only got the one flag, but now I've got this dash border on the bottom there. And so what I've done is in that template file, I've added another class that's wrapped around this, and so I could target that class with CSS and say, put a dash border on the bottom. So that's an example of specificity there, is that there's the generic flag that you have that I'm doing my theming on, and if I put more flags on this, you'd see that the flags are still stacked on top of each other because of that one template file. But because I'm more specific in this situation, I actually have this dotted border on the bottom. So that's specificity that you're seeing right now in suggestions. Okay, so to summarize all the stuff that I talked about, just in the nick of time too here, the key principles to keep in mind with Drupal is this idea of collaborating. There's ways that you can collaborate. There's proper ways that you can do things so that you can get Drupal to do what you want it to do without having to hack into any of the things where you end up losing your changes. So to summarize all of what we looked at, there's a module, there's a hook, there's a template, there's an altar that you can use to get done whatever you need to get done. If it doesn't exist, well, then you can write a patch for that module or whatever you need to do so that now you do have the hook, the template, or the altar. Or if you needed to write a new module, and then you can contribute it back to the community, and then everybody will have that accessible for them to use. And there you have it. So I went over a fair amount of information here. As I said at the beginning, I will be turning this into a Udemy course at some point. Just ping me, get in touch with me through any of these channels, and when I've got the Udemy course up and running, I will make sure that I get you a free coupon to use that course. You can go over all the stuff that I've done here and so much more as well, including a better example of using Drupal Altar.
Thanks.
Thanks for coming.